This is Trend Following Radio, where great thinking comes alive. Nobel Prize winners, legendary traders, best-selling authors, and the pros that know what drive us irrational human beings. I am your host, Michael Covel. Not filtered, raw, honest. That's my passion. Big market moves. The Swiss franc. And boy, for those trend following haters, they came out of the woodwork. I just get the emails. This must mean the end of trend following. It's over. The Swiss franc, they were all leveraged so much. Instead of myself, my humble self, trying to address the issue of trend following losses on the Swiss franc, not unlike some numbskull supposed hedge fund manager that lost $800 million. I mean, what moronic strategy were you using to trade if you lost your entire fund on the Swiss franc? Worse yet, not just the manager, not just the trader that had that strategy. Who were the moronic clients that allowed their money to be traded that way? Alas, that's a different story. First, from David Harding, a clip from CNBC discussing the Swiss franc move and 2014 performance in the trend following world.
Stark difference in performance over the last 12 months between the hedge fund or the traditional hedge fund industry and what we've seen as far as the managed futures industry is concerned, as you've said to me before, the non-crystal ball owning sector of the financial markets. Given the debate right now, the volatility, the noise about just what's going on, is there an advantage here to not having to predict where markets are going?
Well, some of the news commentary had sort of headlines in like, the robots trounced human traders last year and so on and so forth. The idea, of course, we in our business don't really feel like robots, actually. The impression is always given that the computer is doing the trading. The computer, of course, is very helpful in implementing a pre-researched program of trading, but it's not to say the robots are actually doing the trading. But last year, our sort of trading is based upon a pre-researched program. We don't take views on economies. We're agnostic about things. We just bet on more abstract things about financial market data, such as there have always been trends in the past and there'll be trends in the future. We don't know what those trends are going to be. And last year there were lots of trends, actually. It was a bumper year. And so we benefited, but not because we had foresight. No,
a lot of volatility. And whereas some people might have been second guessing, as you said, a sort of pre-prepared program, in a sense, allowed you to benefit in some way. I know you don't believe in the idea of a paradigm shift, that central bank intervention, government policy has created an environment that makes your industry more difficult. Does this now quash the death knell calls that we were having in the past few years about your industry, do you think?
I don't think anything will ever quash it. I mean, when we haven't made money for a bit, everyone says it's dying and it's dead. People much prefer relating to stories about the world and economies which purport to say what's going to happen. People can identify, their instinct is to believe and try to work out what's going to happen and then bet on that.
A crucial one in that point is what happened with the Swiss last week. Can I ask you if you were actually long Swiss? Because yes, Euro-Swiss has gone sideways for 3 years, but if I look far longer than that, actually the Swiss has been in an uptrend for a long time.
Yes, well, I'm rather ashamed to admit we were short, actually. But
why?
we traded Swiss mainly against dollar. We had down-rated Euro-Swiss when the two things pegged together. We'd said, there's a big change in the volatility, so we had modified our program. That was an obvious fact that you wouldn't use the historic volatility. So we'd made a modification, which meant that we didn't have a very, very big position. We were short against the dollar. On the day, we were down 0.1% as a result of having a fairly large short position. 0.1%. That's because we made money in all the other markets we trade on that day, which made up for the losses.
Well, there you have it from one of the most successful trend-following traders alive. Their loss on the day that the Swiss franc moved was 0.1%. And by the way, if you did not understand David's very cool British accent in the beginning, he was saying robot. I had to listen twice too. I didn't catch. It's such a distinguished accent compared to us Americans, but he was saying robot. Also, by the way, check out the video. So David's standing there with the nice wintry backdrop at Davos. But the young lady that's interviewing him, you can't help but notice she's very attractive. She's wearing very tight jeans. I know you're not supposed to talk about this stuff in 2015. But damn it, I noticed these things. Back to the discussion. 0.1%. That was the move. This isn't FXCM. Trend following's not a Forex broker. All you people out there that want to get 30 to 1 leverage, 50 to 1 leverage, 500 to 1 leverage, let me put it very succinctly. You're idiots. You're gonna blow up. You just did blow up. And you'll blow up again if you try it again. 500 to 1 leverage, 50 to 1 leverage? Come on, there's no free lunches. But I thought that was a great line from David Harding. 0.1%. On the day where I got all these emails from people saying, oh, trend following's over now. There's going to be carcasses out there. Dead cows laying in the street that were all over leveraged on the Swiss franc. Well, it didn't work out that way. On to my guest today, who is actually working on a trading system too. Except it has nothing to do with the markets. Well, tangentially. He's ultimately trying to build a trading system off the movement of human faces, completely automated. Now that is very cool. My guest today is Dan Hill, recognized authority on the role of emotions in consumer and employee behavior. As a young guy, he saw that facial expressions helped to navigate an unfamiliar setting. Today, he runs Sensory Logic, a scientific insights firm that analyzes consumers' facial expressions to help companies better navigate consumers' emotionally driven decision-making processes. I learned about Dan by reading a New York Times article where NBA basketball teams were hiring him to help them make a decision on using the second pick in the draft. Do we want to take this one guy or do we want to take this other guy? And part of the decision-making the teams were making was to judge, to analyze the facial expressions of these young guys, all in an effort to find the heart of a champion, the lion, so to speak. Cool stuff. I hope you enjoy my conversation today with Dan Hill. Let me jump right in. For my audience, a very diverse audience, but I'm sure they're going to find your work terribly fascinating. I know I'm going to. And the first thing you just have to say is you just have to say face coding expert, and that's a mouthful. That immediately raises flags and says, what is a face coding expert? The floor is yours, my friend.
A face coding expert is someone who knows to look at the muscle movements in the face because they reveal a lot about people. They reveal how motivated you are because your emotions turn on when something matters to you, and they reveal specific emotions, 7 in all: happiness, surprise, anger, fear, sadness, disgust, and contempt. So to be a face reader means you're looking for action speaking louder than words, but in this case, it's muscle movement in the face that reveals these things.
Let me let you go back in time a little bit on the science here in evolution, Darwin. So people might immediately say, well, come on, reading faces, and we're going to go into the detail in a second, but reading faces, and you might get some immediate skepticism. The numbers of muscles in our face, and you can describe these numbers, there's an evolutionary aspect to this. Why don't you talk about that?
Yeah, Darwin's an incredible guy. It's not just his work on evolution. Darwin essentially leapfrogged 100 years ahead because the breakthroughs in brain science, the neurobiology aided by fMRI brain scans in the last 25 years have confirmed that we are primarily emotional decision makers. Well, Darwin got there first. Darwin said to himself essentially, why do we have emotions? They must have an adaptive advantage. They must help us. And he began to investigate how emotions best get registered in a person, and it's the face. It's the face because there's 43 muscles in the face. So it's a very sensitive and diverse tableau of ways in which you can show the emotions. It's also true that the face is the only place in the body where the muscles attach right to the skin. So it's quick, real-time data, and it's so hardwired into the brain that as Darwin first realized, and it's now been confirmed by easily more than a half dozen studies, even a person born blind emotes the same way as you or I. So this is different than body language. Body language is affected by gender and by culture. An expression that may be benign in Belgium, for instance, could get you killed in Sicily. So you're looking for something that's universal, and facial coding can do that for you. So 43 muscles in the face, Darwin's the one who got there first, really presaged where everything was going to move to in the 21st century.
Dan, I'm sure you were not expecting to go down this path as a 13-year-old young man. So what was the trigger? How did you go down this avenue? What was the happening? Where was the light bulb? Well, there's probably been many light bulb moments, but what was your evolution?
Interesting question. You are right. As John Lennon said, life is what happens to you while you're making other plans. I did not expect to be a facial coder. Now, there's probably some reasons in retrospect why it makes sense. My family moved to Italy when I was a young boy, so I went to Italian first grade in a fishing village, waited all day for the math unit so I could have something to compete in. Obviously, Italians are very famous for their nonverbal communications. My mom was an interior designer. She took me around to the art museums in Europe. She said I was in love with Rembrandt by the age of 7. Rembrandt does faces extremely well. So I probably had a disposition to go this direction, but this is what it actually took to launch a career in it. I got lucky. In 1998, someone I knew at IBM sent over an article about the breakthroughs in brain science and its implications, particularly for business. That the old saw was that we were supposedly like Mr. Spock from Star Trek, that we were rational decision makers. We took the utility of all the information we could gather, and we made the conscious, rational choice. Well, the article this guy sent over to me from a now deceased Cornell University publication instead revealed that, among other things, the conservative estimations that at least 95% of our thought activity is subconscious. It's probably around 98%. And everybody feels before they think. In evolutionary terms, the emotional part of the brain is much older. And so we go from sensory impressions to emotional response to a little bit of conscious cognitive activity, but not very much. And we're on to the decision that we basically already made in our gut. I found that absolutely fascinating and liberating. It tied into readings I was doing, looking at neurochemical reactions in the body. It tied into things I was learning about early childhood and how much of an imprint those first 2 years make on us. So all of that combined led me into the hunt saying, okay, I've got to find a tool, I've got to find a means to be able to capture and quantify the emotional dimension, and facial coding was that tool.
Let me lure people into a practical example, something that was topical. It's where I initially caught your work in the New York Times. NBA basketball, the Milwaukee Bucks. This is right up your alley, right? So talk to me about the idea of Jabari Parker versus Dante Exum.
Sure. Without giving away too much, because I need to, protect my confidentiality.
Yeah, of course.
But sure, you're looking for character. You have new owners, they come from Wall Street. They know the value of getting information that gives you a competitive edge. You know that you're putting a lot of money on a number 2 draft choice, and you may not get a second opportunity like this for years, if not decades to come. So you don't want to get it wrong. And if you're going to do it right, you have to recognize that in the NBA, just like in business in general, sure, talent matters, but it's also the character of the person who has that talent. Are they someone who can go off the rails readily? Is it someone who is resilient and can hang in there? Really what they were looking for, and the reason why I could advocate for Parker in no small part, is I wanted to look for somebody who, recognizing that they're probably going to lose more games than they're going to win, wasn't going to slump, wasn't going to give up, wasn't going to turn into someone who was pouting essentially, who really had the broad shoulders, not just physically, but emotionally, to hang in there, who had a real determination and an emotional maturity. And so I don't want to say anything against a rival player, but when you looked at the talent pool combined with the emotional disposition, Parker really stood out for me.
Well, this is what's interesting. You're taking the facial coding, and now you've got a use for it. I mean, you're in this instance, you're essentially trying to find the heart of a champion.
You are correct. Because we can all go back to the same data pool, a la Moneyball, et cetera, and say, how tall are they? How strong are they? How fast do they run? What's their batting average, their free throw shooting percentage? But those are all public stats. what the new owners from Wall Street were interested in no small part is I want a unique data set, and I do need to get to the heart of a champion because as everyone from Darwin on has been able to capture, we're emotional beings, and that's no less true in sports. And in the case of basketball, it's a team sport. So another thing I was looking for with Parker is how coachable is the guy? How much is he going to take into consideration his teammates and not just try to be someone who does it all on his own, because there's no way that's going to work.
Getting back to the face part of this, though, and I'm looking at one of your charts here from the New York Times, kind of got a profile of a successful player, profile of a problem player, and one of the first things on the chart is the idea of joy and a true smile. And so why don't you talk about the idea of a smile and how representative that can be of these characteristics you're looking for in the heart of a champion?
Smiles are important because happiness is the one positive emotion here. If you're around someone who's a sad sack, that sooner than later becomes locker room poison. I mean, it's a downer. So happiness is important, and it's important for a couple of reasons. One is it projects hope. You want to have the hope, the belief that you can win that game. You want to have that delight in playing the sport itself. This is something people carry on from their childhood. Yes, they're in the adult realities of, paychecks and winning and losing seasons and all of that. But you still want that elemental, piece of joy that comes through. Another thing is that happiness gives you a broader consideration set. When you're happy, the brain, the head literally cools down. You're taking in air. It means that you can kind of have a more expansive view often if you're someone with a fair degree of happiness. Now, I just said fair degree of happiness because joy is really the top level. It means that the muscle around the eye relaxes. You get that twinkle in the eye. Maybe Woody Allen can fake it, but us mere mortals cannot. And so joy is a really unique emotion, and you do want some of that, but too much happiness can be a liability just as it can be a strength to have a moderate degree, because too much happiness can mean that you get sloppy with the details, that you're blissed out, you're comfortable with where you are. What I found is that the great champions, there is that elemental joy, delight in playing the sport and certainly in winning, but it's also that they're determined to keep pushing themselves and get to another level. So the reasonable degree of happiness is the key.
It's interesting. In the New York Times piece, there was a couple players, an NBA player, Carmelo Anthony, an NFL player, Jay Cutler, and the pictures were, I'm sure the guys have smiles at certain points in time, but they kind of had a sullen persona. And that's actually just in my watching sports, they don't give off that joy. And so even though you might be a superstar athlete, you might have all the skill in the world, you might be one of the best, that's different than a heart of a champion.
It is, because emotions are hugely contagious. One of the reasons they get us an adaptive advantage is that we sense the emotions of others. So if you've got a teammate and you can just tell that guy is not into it, that he doesn't have the hope and the belief that you can win, that he's going through the motions, that he's downcast and forlorn, there's no way that that's not going to percolate, into your own reaction and how you're going to perform. Again, emotions are very, very contagious. They can give us an adaptive advantage, but they can also suck us down the drain. And so, yes, the two players you just mentioned, there is a certain degree of sullenness. I'm putting up with this. I've got a good paycheck. But that's not the same thing that brings you a championship.
Yeah, absolutely. But now, I did catch in preparing to talk to you, I saw a comment that you made about the CEO of Oracle years ago, Larry Ellison, and you made the comment, and I'm just taking a line here, so I could be slightly out of context, but you said something to the effect that he's not comfortable in his own skin. I don't know what Larry's net worth is. I know it's exceedingly high. So talk about the issue of in business, there could be some extreme success stories that don't, in a team situation, you were talking about the NFL and the NBA, a little bit different, but if you're the head of the company and you happen to be a certain type or a certain character, it doesn't necessarily rule out this extreme success. Talk about that contradiction.
Sure. No, you're referring back to a nice spread we had in USA Today, front page of the money section, looking at famous CEOs. And I remember the Allison case very strongly because he was the only one of the, I think it was 10 or 12 CEOs that they had me look at that exhibited zero happiness. Now, what I just said a moment ago was, no happiness has its problems. I'm going to come back to that. But too much happiness has its problems as well. The great athletes, take Kobe Bryant. There's a little bit of joy when he finally wins, but mostly Kobe has the look of an assassin. Kobe is angry. He's determined. He wants to beat you. And there's no doubt that Allison has that same vibe to him. You are absolutely right that Allison's been very successful. My question is, I was stunned by the absolute absence, and I took 2 or even 3 different interviews, so they're on different occasions, different formats. To go for that length of time, half an hour or more, and not smile at all is pretty striking. So obviously Allison has been successful. My question is, if he even showed a modicum of happiness, how many more, lieutenants might he have kept by his side who frankly just got burned out for the lack of affirmation, the lack of, probably a smile and a thank you that felt, really genuine after success on a project? I'm not here to say that you need to be over the top with happiness. In fact, for one NBA team, there was a very prized rookie who just didn't seem to get it. He was really comfortable. He was really upbeat all the time. He just didn't bear down. The studies will show you that a successful CEO, that they have to be conscientious. That's probably the number one determinant. They stay focused and they move things forward. You'll also find that if you look at what's called the Big Five factor, the leading model on personalities, they are not terribly agreeable people. So we have to be careful here that the happiness is not the ultimate in terms of getting there. Anger is actually probably very important because anger is an emotion is about I want to be in control of my life, I want to make progress, I want to sweep aside barriers. Obviously, a Kobe Bryant and Allison, they've done those things. The question is, can you keep the anger within bounds so you don't create, hot-headed problems for your subordinates and teammates and colleagues? So, I still think you want some element of joy to really maximize your potential.
I'm sure some of my audience, being bright and skeptical, perhaps sometimes. So where do you see your work? Where are the weak spots? Is there an Achilles heel here, or are you just at the beginning of something that we're just beginning to understand?
Well, I think we're missing one piece of the puzzle that will probably help for the skeptics. Sure, Darwin did his original work, but as you can guess, he was not available for a conversation. When I discovered facial coding and wanted to launch my company, there's a man named Paul Ekman who has been cited by Time magazine as one of the 100 most influential people on the planet. I don't mean merely in psychology. I don't mean merely in American academia or letters. I mean in the world, because what he did is he took Darwin's template and he codified it. Over the course of about 13 years or so, he systematically works with a colleague at the School of Medicine in San Francisco to figure out which muscle movements correspond to which emotions. And that's valuable because every emotion has its own meaning. If you say someone is a negative person, I would immediately come back to you and say, well, is it fear versus anger versus sadness? They're all negative emotions, but they have a different circumference of meaning. So I think if there are limitations, it's that some of the muscle movements signal more than one emotion. So you are looking for the correlation between what's the patterns over time. As George Orwell said, by the age of 50, a man has the face he deserves. People do have signature expressions. They give it away. But it's always helpful to have a context to be able to see what they're saying versus how they feel, what are the situations, and try to develop it by degrees. I mean, human beings are complicated. There's no question of that. So you can't rush to judgments prematurely. We just mentioned the case of Allison, who has no smiles whatsoever and has been hugely successful. But I bet if you look closely, and I did, that anger, that conscientiousness, that drive was certainly there. In that very same study, I basically figured out that Gates was about to step down, because Gates was on a joint thing with Steve Jobs. What really struck me was how little emoting Gates was making, that he was pretty comfortable, pretty relaxed. That engine wasn't running as hard as it had in his previous interviews. And it wasn't so long after that he actually announced that he would be by degrees kind of, stepping down from his current role.
So you mentioned the idea of an inventory of muscles to emotion. How is technology being used today to assist that process, and how is technology going to unfold further in the years to come?
Sure. I was the first one to bring facial coding into business practice. Dr. Ekman was using it for work in psychology and with the CIA and the FBI, but really that was pretty much the circumference. I brought it into business because I said to myself, this is crazy. We're doing focus groups and online surveys. We are counting on the fact that people are going to tell us the truth, that we never get lied to, that there's lip service, that there's grade inflation, let alone the fact that all the information we're capturing is cognitively filtered. So that brings us to facial coding, and just like the Russians want a warm water port, you do a little bit of facial coding and you long for the chance to have it automated. The question is where we're at right now versus where we're going to be. The old saw that in the short term we overestimate technology and in the long term we underestimate it is probably spot on. I would say at this point that the automation that's been introduced into business still needs refinement. It still needs improvement. Most of those systems, for instance, cannot tell the difference between a smile and a smirk. A smirk is contempt. If trust is the emotion of business, then contempt is its opposite. I don't trust you. I don't respect you. Most systems can't even pick up that fundamental difference accurately right now. So they have a ways to travel. But let's imagine in the next 3 to 5 years, if some of them are assiduous about this and really get their act together, that they're going to keep making improvements. And we will reach a point where, as I've already predicted, facial coding is going to be very pervasive in society. Not just market research, but going into store environments. We have electronic billboards that already respond based on your gender. If you're a guy, you might not see a certain billboard because it's aimed for women. We're going to have a future where the ability not just to have identity recognition, your age, your gender, your ethnicity, but to have emotion recognition really should presage having very sensitive technology products that can respond to our mood, that might understand that we're confused about how to use a product, and suddenly a help screen pops up without us even prompting because they've read that we are not following what we're supposed to do. So I think you're going to see an incredible boomlet of opportunities that facial coding will open, but it does need to be more accurate than it is right now. But it's a bright future.
I think I already want to wear my mask from V for Vendetta. No one knows who I am. I'm already thinking about how to get around you. So I'm gonna have to work on that. Hey, let me jump to presidential elections really quick. And having grown up in the Washington, D.C. area, let me throw this at you from my perspective, looking at presidents and presidential candidates. And I would like for you to expand on this. But if I look at President Obama, President Bill Clinton, President George Bush the younger, these were all kind of pretty happy looking guys. They could smile. I think they connected with the audience. On the flip side, if I was to talk about someone like McCain or Hillary or Newt Gingrich, these folks just had really rough emotions on their face. Am I onto something here with my amateur analysis?
No, you're pretty accurate, actually. There was a study done by Marty Seligman, who's a famous psychologist at the University of Pennsylvania. In his case, it was a slightly older study now. He was looking from 1948 to 1988. He found that in 9 of those 10 elections, the person that he would the candidate he would classify as being the more upbeat person won. The one exception was Nixon over Humphrey in 68. But, of course, Humphrey was settled as the VP in an administration that was seen as responsible for Vietnam. So, it was maybe a tough year. There's a lot of race riots going on. But generally speaking, you are correct. At least to this point in America, there remains the American dream, the hope that we can be transcendent. Americans like winners. Winners tend to smile when it's all said and done. And so the more upbeat candidate, Clinton's a perfect example. He showed a little bit of anger, but he always balanced it with smiles and upbeat nature. Bush Jr., Bush 43, kind of interesting. He showed a smile and a smirk often simultaneously. There was a certain cockiness to him. So if you liked him, it was confidence. If you disliked him, it was arrogance. And if you move to some of the other candidates, sure, McCain, has his humorous moments, but he's basically a hothead. He's an angry guy. And that didn't sit well with voters, especially when they were concerned about someone being stable in 2008. What Obama had, at least in 2008, was that electric big smile. I had been very predictive that both him and Huckabee would do unusually well in 2008 because they had the best smiles in the race by far. Romney kind of is saddled with what I call the Energizer Bunny smile. It goes on and on. A true smile lasts 4 seconds or less. In Romney's case, whether he was being assailed by Obama or by Republican opponents in the primary debates, it was always amazing to me how he just keeps smiling and smiling, but it wasn't a genuine smile.
This isn't a comment on the politics of the man at all, because people are going to have different views. But I can't imagine in this day and age that a personality like Richard Nixon would ever be elected president again.
Well, Nixon, of course, famously ducked the debates, as did LBJ, because they watched what had happened to Nixon in 1960, where everyone who listened to the debate on radio thought he had won, but everyone who watched it on TV swung toward Kennedy, and it was decisive. So I would agree with your assessment. I think that the darker personality has a hard time. You might remember Bob Dole, for instance.
Oh, yeah.
I've gone back and looked at his debate performances. They were every bit as dark as Richard Nixon's, every bit as combative and partisan, especially since he was up against Clinton Sunshine. It just was a hard go. I think that race was essentially over before it began.
Yeah. Listen, so facial expressions, we're clearly seeing it's not just what someone says, but so many people, and I can just think of some conversations I had the other day, people will say, well, listen to what I say. And then I'm sitting there looking at their face, and I don't have the skill set you have. I don't have the understanding, but I have my gut level intuitions, and I can look at someone's words. I can look at the face and the emotions, and it's two different things. I sometimes wonder, is it a conscious or an unconscious deception, or is it possibly both, depending on the situation?
Well, it's interesting. The biggest lies in life are the ones we tell ourselves. I look good in this dress. I haven't gained any weight. I'm on top of this situation. There's an element in which human beings really primarily want two things. We want to feel good about ourselves, and we want to attract allies. So we don't necessarily scrutinize situations as carefully as we should. Albert Mubarak, a former professor at UCLA, looked at what he called ambiguous situations, where there might be people who don't really know each other, there are different ranks within an organization, there's some issue at stake in negotiations, for instance. So there's not going to be open, transparent communication. And in those situations, he concluded that about 55% of the true communication of what was going on in the situation came from the face, 38% from the voice, and merely 7% from the words. That's why we really need to take into account that actions do speak louder than words and look toward the emotions. In our work, whether it's in law, in politics, in sports, in market research, we're interested in what we call the safe feel gap. They said this, but they felt that. Now, to be generous, it may be that they're not aware of how they actually feel deep down, that it's that, conscious versus subconscious thing going on. But it can also be true, of course, that there's a degree of either inarticulateness or deception, that we are sweet-talking our way through a situation, but we're really sitting someplace very different. So we see that there are times where people say the right thing, but they don't feel it. They don't emotionally stand behind their words. Sometimes their reactions are ambivalent, but the words are seemingly straightforward. And then there's the dreaded safe feel gap situations, which come up a lot. So what you've experienced, what you've sensed, is very accurate indeed.
What about learning, teaching? So I think some people probably know that they don't have the same connective ability with an audience like a Bill Clinton. I mean, people, maybe they don't. Maybe they delude themselves. But I think some people probably know that, like, gosh, I wish I could be as gregarious, or I wish I could connect with an audience as well as someone like Bill Clinton. Can people learn? Can they be taught? Can they improve? Are there ways to not be Jay Cutler with making $20 million a year, but his teams are losing a ton of games and he gets traded every third year? Is there a way to get above and beyond some of the more negative facial expressions and emotions?
Yeah, we're not trying to Frankenstein people, but I have worked with executives. I've done executive coaching. I think the first key thing is twofold. You need to recognize how you emote, what your patterns are, if you do have a signature expression. But then you also have to have the emotional intelligence to know what these emotions mean and the impact that they could have on people. In my experience, most executives tend to be there because they are good at finance, at operations, or at legal. Those are three primary reasons why they're in the executive suite. Some of them come from marketing or sales. My father-in-law, former CEO, actually came up through the sales ranks and was very good at interacting with people. But it's not always the strongest skill set, and it can be bolstered. So to know that I'm showing, for instance, one of the things that most worries me in an executive would be if you show a combination of fear and contempt. Because contempt is inherently going to be condescending. People are going to feel that they're beneath you. They're probably less likely to bring forward information. If you show fear, you basically freeze, so the information may be presented to you, but you're not able to really digest and move on it. So that's a pretty toxic duo. And if that's something an executive is both feeling and reflecting to others, then you would hope that an adjustment could be made. I have been able to work with executives and make some movement for them because these things can be fairly revelatory and they can make a real difference. We are already at work, as you can well imagine, to go well beyond the USA Today coverage, and we are tracking CEOs. We are looking at their emotive patterns, and we are beginning to correlate it to their stock performance and other indices for the companies. Sooner than later, we're going to, nothing's infallible, nothing's perfect in the world, but we are honing an algorithm to figure out which CEOs for investors, frankly, will make sense.
So you're proposing a trading system on facial expressions. That will be terribly fascinating.
I am, because just as in athletes, these are important individuals. It's been estimated by psychologists that a CEO can influence as much as half of the corporate environment, the corporate culture, through the force of their personality. So, what is the impact of that person, let alone with key target audiences like regulators, key funds that may be investing in the company, and so forth. They've got some really important constituencies. How do they come across all of those?
Is there a tipping point, Dan, where everybody just says, my gosh, we all need this, we can't do without it? Not that it's a foolproof or it's got guarantee, but is it a piece of research or a piece of data that boards of directors are going to all want in the not too distant future?
I actually believe that. I mean, I staked myself when I started my company 16 years ago that facial coding was going to be a huge tool, huge opportunity, and was really going to transform the world. I innately believe that almost from the moment that I discovered Darwin's realization that even a person born blind emotes the same way as you or I. In market research, it's already been voted by a panel of experts as a tool that will transform that particular industry. But as I'm indicating, it's going to go a lot broader and deeper over time. And I think as it bleeds out into the common culture, yes, you are going to get to a situation where boards of directors and who they're going to hire in as the next CEO, across sports teams, in legal cases, looking at videotape depositions and seated jurors and responses to opening arguments from both counsel, etc. You're going to really see this thing blow out bigger. That's why, frankly, I remain extremely excited even 16 years into this, because the prospects just keep opening and opening and opening up.
Dan, one last question for you. I'll let you run. It's early there. It's late here. 25 years from now, and maybe my number's a little off in the way you think about this, but 25 years from now, paint the sci-fi scenario that will exist in the research that the paths that you and other colleagues like yourself are going down. Where will this morph to? What's the sci-fi scenario where this goes to?
that your car knows you're suffering from road rage and maybe even turns off or gives you a warning. The product that I indicated, you're on your website and you really are not getting the information you want and you're feeling sad because you're disappointed. That the website realizes this and it maybe spins out to a new part of the website, some other additional information. That every person who's hired, and I know there's implications for this regarding one's privacy and so forth, but I see this pretty inevitable that we're going to find a situation where the regulators are either going to allow it or going to have to ban it, but the capability is going to be there to apply this to every job interview. Not just someone like a Parker in the NBA, but every single employee, because, again, if you look at the literature, the traditional job interviews are terribly unpredictive of success on the job. I mean, it's a travesty almost. Your romantic partners. Obviously, can you get, this is a very important decision. The Love Lab at the University of Washington, Seattle uses facial coding. With 15 minutes of videotape facially coded, they have a 90% accuracy rate if the couple will stay married. We've used it on speed dating. We have 100% accuracy whether the man and the woman then reports that, yes, they'd like a second conversation with the other party. I mean, it's almost hard to explain just how broadly this can go because it's really every place. And I don't think we're talking 25 years out. I think we're talking 15 at the most, quite probably 10 years.
Your books, I think there might be more than this. Emotionomics, About Face. Your website is sensorylogic.com. Am I missing anything?
My latest book is called On Emotion, Salvaging Market Research. For those who want to get best ROI on their product development. I did have a book on politics called Space Time in 2008. I actually have 5 books in all.
Okay. Dan, fascinating stuff. I look forward to seeing what happens in the years to come. And like I said, if it gets too tough, I'm just going to wear a mask. And then I'll probably go to jail for that. They'll probably make the mask illegal first before they make your work illegal.
Well, it's interesting you should mention that because you might remember during the London riots of a year or so ago, given the prevalence of the surveillance cameras, that a lot of the protesters, whatever term you want to use for them, were wearing masks. And I think that already begins to highlight the fact that this is going to be on the front pages.
Cool stuff, Dan. Hey, thank you for taking some time today and wish you the best.
Thank you so much. Thanks, Michael.
Take care. I see a time when those awake will understand how to make money in up, down, and surprise markets. Whether new trader or experienced, college student or financial advisor, protecting against a crash or just trying to make a lot of money, trend following offers everyone an answer in uncertain times. To get started immediately, send me an email, michael@covel.com. I will send you the right trend following steps to take along with my free video. But if you want to buy and hold, trust the government and trust Wall Street, this is absolutely not for you.